welcome in the Lions team reporter. You can find her on the internet, on Twitter, at Dannie Rogers _ Danny, my friend, how are you? How's life? How are things? Good morning. Happy Friday. What's going on over there?
Good morning, AB. Just surviving this cold, gross weather, but and enjoying some time off, bittersweet time off since the Lions season ended a little bit soon, but we're doing good.
Wow. All right. So you got a little time off. We played the audio, a small snippet from you and Executive Vice President, General Manager Brad Holmes. You guys had your sit down, your one-on-one there, and it was the part in which you had asked General Manager Holmes about the connection with the players, and you had talked about how Amon-Ra St. Brown and Penei Sewell had both talked to Brad, and they talked to you about just how much, thanking him for bringing them to Detroit and how much that meant to them. And then Brad Holmes' voice starts to get a little emotional. His voice starts to crack a little bit. I start to get a little emotional. I'm sitting there. I just want to hug the man. Can you kind of put into perspective what that conversation was like?
Yeah, I'm so glad that Brad, who is one of the 32 GMs in the NFL, he allowed himself to be vulnerable, and we've seen a lot of Lions players and even Coach Campbell be vulnerable over this season and last. So it all fits with the culture, just how much this team and this staff just love each other and how much they put into this game and doing what they did this season. But I've been thinking about this for the last 3 days. Brad and I had that sit down Tuesday, and I'm like, really, what do I think kind of drove that emotion? One, he loves what he does, and he loves the players he was able to bring to Detroit. But something else I've been thinking about, and I don't want to speak for Brad, this is my thoughts on why he might have been a little more emotional, is because he had his presser with the entire media minutes before he came up to the studio and did that sit down with me. And one of the questions he was asked in that presser was to essentially downplay the production that last year's draft class had. And mind you, last year's draft class is Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, Aleem McNeil, among others. And Brad didn't like the question, and you could tell from his facial expressions he didn't like it. He kept asking the reporter to clarify what he was actually trying to ask. And I don't mind Brad taking issue with calling it a lack of production with his first ever draft class as a general manager, because you have humans like St. Brown and Penei Sewell and Aleem McNeil who were in that class. So minutes later, I asked him about what it means to him to have those kind of players thank him for bringing them to Detroit. And that's just my thoughts. I think that's maybe why he got a little more emotional in that time. But it was awesome that he was vulnerable with us.
Yeah, I thought that it was absolutely great. And when you think about Derek Barnes is playing, he was a 6th-round pick. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 5th-round pick in that draft. Aleem McNeil starts every game. Levi Onwuzurike hasn't been available due to injury. Melly, he's been kind of in and out of the lineup trying to figure out what a good spot for him might be. And Penei Sewell is your right tackle for as long as Taylor Decker is on the left side. I'm completely fine with that class. When you think about what this 2022 season meant from your perspective, Danny, comparing it to 2021, right? It took forever to get that first win, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the guys we're talking about here, and when they want to compare production, it's like, okay, this guy's the second highest ranked wide receiver from Pro Football Focus this season, so I don't know. He was a 5th rounder. You're talking about a value pick, my God. But when you think about 2022 in comparison to 2021, how much different did it feel for you that this team, although they started 1-6, they turned it on and really never looked back?
I get this question a lot, just what the difference was like in a building from last year to this year. I can tell you genuinely there wasn't that much of a difference. It's a really great place to go to work every day because of the people like Dan Campbell and Sheila Hamp and Brad Holmes and this staff and these players. Not a single player thinks that they're better than each other or better than another human. They're the best group ever to be around. So from my perspective, just going into work every day and the energy and how much this coaching staff and these players cared literally never changed. I laughed with this I laughed about this with Brad when he came and sat down. I'm like, I watched our interview, our postseason interview from last year. I'm like, we made 3 wins work. We were able to spin it and, take some positives out of it. But I'm like, man, 9 wins sure makes this a lot easier to talk about. So from that perspective, it definitely made my job a little bit easier, sometimes a little bit harder when there's so many good things to talk about. But how much this staff and these coaches cared never changed, never wavered. And it's just the best group and the best place to go to work every day.
Danny, what was Lambeau like? Because, there were reports that they were showing the game on the big screen. And if guys are out there warming up, then they can see and they can kind of pay attention as well, that the Seahawks and Rams game and the way that was finishing up. And, with the Seahawks being able to beat the Rams in overtime, you just needed one more favor, LA. You've done us a lot this season. Just give us one more favor. It didn't work out. That's neither here nor there. But what was it like being in Lambeau with that going on, knowing that this team had been eliminated from the playoffs, but you never would have been able to tell that from the way that they played and from the way that the game was called by Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson? I thought it was amazing.
I knew, because of the football gods placed us in that 8 p.m. slot after LA Seattle would conclude. I'm like, there's no way that they're going to make this game not matter for us. So that was the point of going to overtime. Like, okay, we get a couple more possessions to figure out what the playoff fate was. So actually, when they were showing the game on the big board in Lambeau, not all the Lions players were out there. I remember as soon as the final score hit, it was crazy. It was like another football god thing. As soon as the final score hit, Seattle won, which means Green Bay had a shot of going to the playoffs if they beat the Lions. Aaron Rodgers and his team started walking out to cheers because people were cheering on Aaron Rodgers walking out onto the field. And if they didn't notice, they were also probably cheering the score on the big board. So not all Lions players were out there. They weren't paying attention to it before the game started. I saw a couple players. One was sitting in the hallway alone with headphones on reading a book. Like, no, they did not care what was happening in that Seattle-LA game. And you could tell they did not care what their fate was. I think they got just as much motivation out of knocking Aaron Rodgers out as they might have had, potentially going to the playoffs, which it ended up in a dub. I'll take either one.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, and to send Aaron Rodgers home, I love the quote. I forget who said it, but if we ain't going, you're not going either. I loved that.
Yes.
I thought that was great. Danny, this team this year, with as many positives as they had in that 8-2 stretch in the final 10, was there a moment that stood out to you where it kind of, it felt like, okay, this isn't a fluke, like they're turning the corner, they're figuring it out, something is clicking here? And if there was, what was that moment to you?
Oh, gosh. That's a great question. The two wins in New York really stick out to me. That Giants win was massive. It was so big. God, that sticks out to me. A lot of these wins, I mean, granted, you had a couple of moments where there were 3 wins here, 3 wins here. But at the start of those 3 wins, they were coming after a loss. So you needed to bounce back. And I love what Aaron Glenn said the entire season. Every time we got to his presser each week, he's like, here's the barrier my team broke today. And it was, okay, we won 3 games. We dropped 1. Could we respond back? All right. Can the defense break this barrier and win this game-winning play in the fourth quarter this week? So it was just really cool for him to see each barrier broken. But to me, it was just winning that Giants game and seeing the look on these players' faces as they were running off the field. That's when I talked to Lee McNeil, and he had an outstanding game. And then Jets was another massive game. You didn't know what quarterback was going to be starting. You knew you're going against one of the best defenses in the league, but you also had one of the best offenses in the Lions going up against them. And they went in and took care of business. Carolina, big old question mark. Not sure what happened with that one, but Lions kept bouncing back. So it's 8 out of the last 10 Lions won. And it's just, to me, those 2 road games just really stick out.
Yeah, and I love the fact they went up to New York. We had to hear a lot about New York coaches and a lot about New York quarterbacks here on this program. Callers wanted to know why they were having success and we were struggling. early
Yes.
on, Danny. Oh, God, it's just the worst. So I'm so glad that we were able to get both of those wins. It really meant a lot. So thanks to the staff for winning those for me. The big question now, kind of, as there is more legitimate excitement for the offseason than ever before, right? I mean, the NFL draft, people can't wait for it because they know that they are ready to make that next step. Dan Campbell said as much, that would be, that's the next hurdle to cross. You got to get into the dance, you got to get into the bracket, and then see what happens from there. Will Jared Goff be the guy to take this team there? Because it feels like he played way better than I think anybody expected after year one. And I do kind of put a lot of the onus on some struggles in year one from the human element. A guy that was a number one pick that was traded away. His replacements lighting the world on fire. He gets sent to Detroit. Things are kind of rough here. He's part of a rebuild. Is he a bridge? What is he? He was sent over here with picks that we only traded him, just for him to bridge it and then to get that draft capital to move forward. I think that's a lot to have to hear and deal with on a regular basis. You could tell he got more comfortable and he just lit the game on fire the last month and a half of the season. So my question to you would be, is Jared Goff going to be the guy under center moving forward so they can continue to address some other areas of this roster?
Yes, that is not even a question for me. Jared Goff will be the starting quarterback in 2023. He played the best year of his career. And mind you, he's played in a Super Bowl before. This is the best Jared Goff that we have seen in a very, very long time. Even he says, personally for him, like this season is up there. And I loved how much more comfortable he got this season. Goff was a little sassy in his media pressers because he was not having the negative talk anymore. When you have one of the top offenses in the league, he's not standing for it. Like, what negativity could you possibly have to say to this man who, like you mentioned, did have a tough year last year? And you're right. There were a lot of moving elements. There are a lot of external factors that played a role in how he played. But that man, like you said, was not wanted in LA anymore. Matthew Stafford didn't want in Detroit anymore. They swapped. Jared Goff coming here, like you said, didn't know if he was just going to be a bridge quarterback or if he could, buy a home here and put roots down here. Him and his fiance moved all the way out here to Detroit, and who knows if he was going to play a second season here. So I cannot imagine the adversity that man went through, and these are all humans, by the way. Everyone wants to say, oh, they're $1 million athletes, suck it up, tough it out. No, these are humans, and Jared Goff is one of the most even-keeled, patient human beings out there. He's always very nice to me, to the staff, everyone else in the building. I cannot say enough good things about Jared Goff, and I don't think there's any question he's going to be a starting quarterback. It's just, okay, do you look towards I haven't even looked past the second round, what picks exactly that we have, but do you look to maybe draft a backup quarterback, or do you swing for the fences next year and allow him to sit? I think any quarterback that can sit under Jared Goff and learn from him for a year or two, you will be set up for success. So Lions might want to look towards getting a backup quarterback because the last two, Boyle and Blau, went their own ways. They have Sudfeld right now, but I don't think they draft a starting quarterback. I just don't. I'm not sure that's in the cards. Everyone's like, oh, this is the draft of the quarterbacks. And then a month later, they're like, yeah, no, you should probably wait till 2024. And I'm like, someone please make up their mind. Just please someone have a Trevor Lawrence year where there is no question he is going to be the number one overall pick. We haven't seen that in a minute. So that's the goal. But, yes, Jared Goff, no question, in my mind, will be the starting quarterback next year.
And I'll tell you what, his fiance walks with purpose. I was trying to make my way down to the field, and there were these four young ladies. I didn't even know who they were. But I could just tell by the way that they were walking. I was like, they're going down to the field for whatever. So I was like, I'm just going to follow them. Dude, they were not stopping. I'm talking beeline. I'm like lead blockers. Like, yep, just get right in line, follow these four. Because wherever they're going, they're not being stopped by anybody. Nobody's even going to ask them any questions. They don't need armbands, passes. They don't need anything.
Yeah,
I'm going right there.
Don't get in the way of an NFL wife trying to get down to the field to hug their guy. Just don't do it. And Christian is beautiful, an amazing human, and works her tail off, always working. So I can't say enough good things about the soon Mrs. Doobie Goff.
Yeah, hey, look, I just want to, if she's going somewhere, let's just get in line and follow through.
Yep.
I thought it was very interesting in the locker cleanout day that DeAndre Swift kind of came clean with what he was dealing with, a high ankle sprain and a separated shoulder for a majority of the season and still played 14 games? I thought that was shocking.
Since week 1. And I asked him, he wasn't very happy with the season that he had. Of course, the production was not there up to his standards. And I asked him, is this the most adverse season you ever had? And he, like, without hesitation, said yes. So I know he wants more out of himself. I'm sure the staff would like more production out of him. But thank God for Jamal Williams. He carried the load. There really was no drop-off. And set, a new franchise record while he was at it.
Kaz Kakage, leader of the Hidden Den, Jamal Williams, or whatever he said.
Whatever
that was.
Whatever he wants.
Yeah, exactly. You set the touchdown record. You could say just about anything that you want. Her name is Dannie Rogers. You can find her on Twitter at Dannie Rogers _ team reporter for the Detroit Lions. My partner in crime on game days, Danny, as always, my friend. Thank you so much for waking up with us this morning. We greatly appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Enjoy some off time right now.
Right? Appreciate you, AB. I'll talk to you soon.